Welcome back. This video will introduce a new way of creating and editing Python projects using a more comprehensive development environment than JupyterLab called Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code, or vscode as it's commonly called, can be downloaded from code.visualstudio.com. This is a Microsoft product, but it works for Mac and for Windows and for Linux as well if you have that. And so download the platform, download the executable, the installer for the platform that you have. So I'm going to click on Download for Windows. It should automatically start. And when it's done, I will open up this executable. I'm going to accept all of the defaults here. You need to accept the license agreement, and I'll accept the default place to install and the name of the shortcut. I'll allow it to add to the path and register code as an editor for supported file types. I'm okay with that as well. And then I'll click on Install. This should take just a minute. And when it's done, it should give me the option to automatically open Visual Studio Code. All right, let's let it launch. And I'm going to go ahead and right-click here and pin to taskbar so that I can quickly and easily access Visual Studio Code at any time. All right, so your interface may look slightly different. And if you don't want to show this welcome page, you can unclick that at startup. This page isn't necessary. So this is where you're going to start at, but where Visual Studio Code is typically used is with a particular project folder. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on Open Folder. And I have a number of different folders within my computer. I'll go over to my desktop, and you can see a number of the different things that we've been working on this semester. I'll create a new folder in this on my desktop, and I'll call it Project. I'll open that and select Folder. And now Visual Studio Code, and it's going to ask me if I want to trust the authors of all files, and say yes, I trust the authors. Now you can see you have an Explorer window that has any files that would be in that particular project folder. I'll go ahead and add a file. I'll call this main.py. And now I have a code editor for main.py, and we can write some Python code. So I'll write print hello world. And what's nice about Visual Studio Code is that you can then execute something directly from here, provided you have the Python interpreter installed. Now, the Python interpreter installed is part of the extensions list. So you can see I clicked over here on extensions, and you can see that Python is not installed just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. It's giving me some suggestions. So I'm going to add Python. And you can program in a number of different languages inside the Visual Studio Code development environment. Right now it's installing. You can see there's also support for Jupyter notebooks directly from within Visual Studio Code. That's a convenient thing to install as well. And I installed sort of the Python package, and as you can see it's installing a number of different things. So the Python package, which included a number of different extensions, has been installed now. Now if I come back over to main.py, having done that, you can see I get a little play button where I can execute a Python file. But you may also notice that in the bottom right hand side it says select interpreter. So I have a number of different Pythons installed on this computer because I have a number of different Conda environments. And you can see it detected my Conda environments. It's detected my base environment. I'm going to select that as my base. And now when I click play, it's going to run my Python file. And you can see that it's activating my environment first. It's running the file which prints hello world, and it's done. To illustrate that this can also be used for Jupyter notebooks, I'm going to go over to my Explorer again, hit plus, and I'll type this one as main.ipynb. And now I get a Jupyter notebook that I can edit. Again, I can type print hello world. It's already selected my base environment, and so this looks very much like a web browser. It's the environment selected in the same way. And I can hit play, and it should execute just like a Jupyter Notebook would, and print "Hello World" once this actually finishes running. So it's thinking about it. There he is. All right, "Hello World." So it's convenient that we can edit .py files, and we can and run them, and we can also run Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook cells as well. These are two separate environments. This is running in its own kernel, right? Its own sort of self-contained Python execution space from main.py. So these are not connected in any way. All right, the last thing I want to show you with Visual Studio Code is that it has Git integration. So this is not yet a Git repository. But if you click here, you can see source control. So we can do actually almost everything that we would otherwise do from the command line directly in Visual Studio Code if we wish. But if you want to work on the command line, I actually prefer that myself. You can do that as well. So I'll go ahead and initialize the repository here. So this is the equivalent of running git init inside the folder. And you can see now that this is our Git repository. It's showing that there are changes which we can stage. So this is the equivalent of doing a git add. And you can see that we can do a commit as well. So I'm going to commit those changes, and we can say what this is. This is going to be a new commit. I'll go ahead and save that and close the commit message. And when you close the commit message, it should actually do the commit. And now you can see that we get the option to publish a branch. And so this is where you might want to connect this to GitHub. I'll go ahead and click on Publish Branch, and it's saying the extension GitHub wants to sign in using GitHub. I can allow that and let this sign into my GitHub account. And then I'll have to provide it my password, which I'll need to look up. But this is basically where you would connect it up to GitHub. Sorry, my password is a little complicated. So there we go. So I'm signing in. And I'll reopen Visual Studio Code, allow it, so it won't ask again. And now it's asking me if I want to publish this to a private GitHub repository or a public GitHub repository, and it's taking me sort of to that. But if you've previously set up a folder to be published to GitHub, so you've already cloned a folder or you've already initialized it and pushed it to GitHub, as we're doing with exercises, you can simply open that and it'll be all connected, and you should be able to push and pull from there. And so this is equivalent to doing it on the command line. There's fundamentally no difference. If I go over to the command line and go to my desktop, so /desktop /project, you can see I can type get status, and we should be able to see that there's a log here that has the commit that I made. Everything's exactly the same as doing things on the command line. Command line's still a little bit more powerful. You may need to go over here occasionally, but you should be able to do things like switch branches and things like that. So you can see there's, if you click on these little three dots, a lot of the options that you might have done with command line are available to you inside Visual Studio Code. So going forward, you can choose to use Jupyter Lab via the browser, which is what we've been doing, or you can choose to use Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebooks via the vscode interface. To summarize, you now have a powerful development environment for creating and editing Python programs, that is VS Code. VS Code has many extensions that make programming work easier. However, almost everything you can do in VS Code, you can also do on the terminal. You'll find some things easier to do in one or the other. And so you should know how to work in the command line. You should know how to work via Jupyter Lab, and you should also know how to work via VS Code.